Elizabeth Warren recently appeared on the Young Turks for an interview with Cenk Uygur, presumably to start rebuilding some of the bridges that she burned in 2016 ahead of what could be a 2020 presidential run. Now, the thing about Elizabeth Warren is that I've kind of put all of her missteps and political miscalculations in a box, and I've stored that box in the very back of my mind because I can put that aside and forget about them, even though they're still there, but I can actually appreciate the fact that her record is so progressive and try to ignore those things. But after I saw this interview, I mean, if this really was an attempt for her to extend an olive branch to progressives, then I think she did an awful job at doing so. And really, all of the feelings that I felt during the primary of betrayal, they just came bubbling back up again. And even though I've tried to suppress them, over the course of the last couple of months, because Elizabeth Warren, again, she is progressive, her record speaks for itself, this interview really illustrated just how out of touch she is and that she's nowhere near as progressive as Bernie Sanders. And I think in many ways it showed that she's not willing to stand up against the betrayals of her own party, and that's really frustrating to me. Now, the thing about the interview is that I think that Cenk Uygur did a great job. He asked all the questions I hoped that he would ask, and what you'll see is that even under a minimal amount of scrutiny, Elizabeth Warren bungled any chance she had at redemption. And again, this interview could have been a great chance for her to repair the relationship that she strained during the primaries. So first of all, Cenk asked her about money in politics and how certain politicians are beholden to their donors. And they both kind of discussed the effect of money on politics, and she railed against Republicans, and rightly so. However, Cenk asked her about Democrats who are also beholden to their donors, and Joe Manchin was named, and Elizabeth Warren defended Joe Manchin.
I want to make a spirited defense that there are folks like Joe Manchin. He works hard on issues that affect working people in West Virginia. He rounded up the whole Democratic caucus, and I give him complete credit for this, to get the US government to move in and make good on the miners' health insurance. I've worked with all of my colleagues, and shoot, are there places where I don't agree with him? You bet. Are there places I have fought with him? Yes, there have, and places I will continue to fight with him. But there are also places where they've stood up for hardworking families where we couldn't get one Republican to stand with us, not one.
So according to Elizabeth Warren, when Republicans show that they're beholden to their donors, that's unacceptable, and she will rail against them. However, if Democrats are just as easily bought and paid for by large multinational corporations like Joe Manchin, then Elizabeth Warren will literally come to their defense. And in fact, she made a spirited defense of Joe Manchin. But the problem is that I know Elizabeth Warren isn't even buying what she's selling, because all she could name was one issue that he was progressive on: extending healthcare to co-workers. How progressive, Elizabeth Warren? But you see, the problem is on almost every single other issue, he sides more with Republicans than Democrats. And of course, I mean, she couldn't really provide a meaningful defense of Joe Manchin, so she quickly pivoted to Republicans. And you'll see that this is a strategy that she used consistently throughout the course of the interview. Yes, Elizabeth, we know that the Republican Party is terrible, which is why we're putting so much pressure on Democrats, because we want a real alternative that's politically viable. We want a party that will win that's not corrupt. So that's why we are doing everything we can to reform the Democratic Party, and we're trying to drag them into the future in a progressive direction, even though they're kicking and screaming and resisting us at every step of the way. So what you're doing is you're taking that D that's in front of his name, and you're saying that that's more important than anything else about Joe Manchin. And basically, the implication here is that she wouldn't even support a primary challenger. So we have someone running against him, Paula Swearengin, who is exponentially more progressive than Joe Manchin, but she decided to defend Joe Manchin. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Now, Cenk asked her why she refused to endorse Bernie Sanders during the primary, and her answer was just nauseating.
Why not back him during the 2016 primaries if you two are the closest aligned in policy?
So look, I think that our primary, I thought was a good thing, and I thought it was good that Bernie was out there, that Hillary was out there. They were giving two different visions. They were out there through all the states. I thought it put both energy on our side. I'll tell you something else I thought it did. It made me proud to be a Democrat. You know, while the Republicans were doing their clown car thing, you know, with who was going to be voted off the island, and then of course ended up with a reality star as their standard bearer. I was proud of what Democrats were out there talking about. I thought it was the right thing to do. And in the end, when it was time, I went out there and fought once it was resolved to try to get Hillary elected, and I would have done the same for Bernie, no doubt about it.
Do you get why some progressives are still mad about that? That Massachusetts was decided by 1.3 points, Iowa was decided by 0.3, that perhaps he could have helped him put him over the top, and then he would have won Iowa, New Hampshire,
Look,
Massachusetts.
And there are people who see it the other way.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I think about it this way. There is nothing the Republicans would love better than for us to stand around and shoot at each other over and relitigate what happened in 2016. I look at what's happening in Washington right now. I look at what Donald Trump wants to do on health care and the Republican majority in Congress wants to do. I look at this new budget they've put out. I look at what's happening right now in the connections with Russia. And I say, God, we got to get focused here. And we got to focus on what Donald Trump is going to do in the next 24 hours, the next week, the next month. That's where we need our energy.
I don't even know what to say about that. Elizabeth Warren, the second most progressive senator in the country, she literally stated here, you heard her correctly, that she was proud of the primary. She's referring to the primary where the chairwoman of her party was forced to resign in disgrace because she was caught rigging the primary against Bernie Sanders. You were proud of that, Elizabeth Warren? You're proud of the way that the party conducted themselves? With the way that superdelegates demoralized Bernie Sanders supporters, with the way that the DNC colluded with Hillary Clinton before anyone announced their campaigns to move up red states ahead on the primary schedule, knowing that Hillary Clinton is more conservative and would probably cultivate an early lead. I mean, you're proud of that, Elizabeth Warren? Really? You're proud of that? Well, if you're proud of that, then you should be ashamed of yourself, because that primary was a disgrace, and that primary is exclusively why millions more people decided to leave the Democratic Party, myself included. And almost immediately, she pivoted to Republicans yet again, and she said, there's nothing the Republicans would love better than for us to stand around and shoot at each other and relitigate what happened in 2016, then continues to talk about the Republicans and tells us to look at what they're doing. And she says, God, we've got to get focused here, and we got to focus on what Donald Trump is going to do in the next 24 hours, in the next week, in the next month. So in other words, ignore our faults because we're not as bad as Republicans. Look away from what we're doing and how we are betraying our base because the Republicans are so bad. We're not as shitty as Republicans, even though we're pretty bad, but so long as we're, just marginally better than Republicans, you should be distracted by Donald Trump and what the Republicans are doing. That's exactly what she's saying, and it's a cop-out. It's a complete and utter cop-out. Saying that the Republicans are bad, I mean, you're going after the low-hanging fruit here. That's not anything that is courageous to say. We all know they're bad, but what really takes courage is for you to stand up against your own party and how they betray the base. And Elizabeth Warren once was courageous enough to do this. I mean, she went after Obama for numerous reasons. I mean, she was against him on the TPP. What happened to Elizabeth Warren? Why are you no longer willing to call out people in your own party? It doesn't make sense to me. Now, after Cenk gave her not one, but two chances to answer the question, she still decided to pivot to Republicans. Now, he then gave her another chance, but this time to indicate whether or not she'll actually take a stand in 2020 and endorse Bernie Sanders if he does decide to run. And I'll bet that you can guess her answer before I even show you the clip. She dodged the question and then quickly pivoted to Republicans.
If you don't run, do you think this time around that you will have a more forceful opinion in the primaries? Because that is when people will decide who our standard bearer is. Their standard bearer is the reality show star.
Yeah.
And our standard bearer will either be a progressive or someone who is more beholden to donors, or someone in between. So if, for example, Bernie Sanders were to run again, if you're not running, would you support him?
I don't know where we'll be in 2020. It's a long time off, but I don't know where we'll be in 2020. I don't think Bernie knows where we'll be in 2020. So I don't know what Bernie's going to do. And I don't want to be in a position to push Bernie to do anything. What I see right now really is that as Democrats, as progressives, we can't make politics a once every 4-year thing. It has got to be an everyday thing. Donald Trump has not been in office, what, 150 days yet? It's less than that. He's got a long, long time to go, or at least the Republicans do. Republican majority in the House, Republican majority in the Senate. The way I see it is, man, we got to be all in on the fights that are occurring right now, the things they're doing right now.
So Elizabeth Warren, whatever backbone I thought she had, it's just gone. I mean, she stayed silent during the primaries, and I don't know what happened. She used to be so courageous, and she no longer has a spine. She's no longer willing to take an issue and stand up because it just might not be politically expedient enough for her. And that's so harmful to her chances in 2020, because what she used to be viewed as was a maverick, as someone who would stand up for progressives no matter what. But she's showing us that she has the capacity to be a coward. Now, Cenk asked her a question that I think is really important. So he asked her what issues the Democratic Party should focus on in 2018. And her answer is just downright unacceptable to me.
Tell me, in 2018, what are the issues that the Democrats should focus on? What do you think are not only important, but winning political issues?
So, look, the Russia thing, we're going to have to see how this one resolves. But right now, the idea that there is a connection between a foreign government that we know, our intelligence agencies have told us, hacked into American systems to influence the outcome of the 2016 election. I mean, that's stunning. So, and right now, Republicans won't even talk openly about the fact that it happened, much less what it is that we need to do to get to the bottom of an investigation about it and make sure it never, ever, ever happens again. I think that's going to be a really important, and where that develops, about the relationship between Russia, the Trump campaign, and Donald Trump.
So out of all the issues that we're fighting for, Medicare for all, net neutrality, climate change, the fight for 15, the first thing that came out of her mouth was, quote, the Russia thing. I don't even know what to say. I don't think I've ever been this disappointed in Elizabeth Warren. She's the one senator, one of two actually, that would just consistently focus on policy substance. And now she thinks Russia is more important than student loan relief or Medicare for all. Unfucking believable. And this is what she said. She said, Russia hacked into American systems to influence the outcome of the 2016 election. That's stunning. Okay, they, quote, hacked into American systems. So are you literally implying now, Elizabeth, that they hacked into voting booths? Because if so, then you're just outright wrong. And that claim would be stunning, but you and I both know that that's not what she was talking about. She was talking about an alleged hack into the DNC and John Podesta's emails, but she didn't even say emails. When she was talking about Russia, the word emails didn't even come out of her mouth. And she said that they hacked into, quote, American systems, because by saying Russia released Hillary Clinton's own words via email and exposed the Democratic Party's own corruption, that doesn't sound as persuasive as saying that Russia literally hacked into, quote, American systems. And what she's saying even contradicts the U.S. Senate intelligence report that Democrats tout so much, which concluded, quote, DHS assesses that the types of systems Russian actors targeted or compromised were not involved in vote tallying. So not only is her rhetoric misleading, but it's actually very irresponsible, because what she's claiming, or certainly implying happened, is huge. If Russia hacked into our election systems, that's a gigantic story, and I'd be right there fighting alongside you, but that's not what happened. What happened was they allegedly released emails That's not the same thing as hacking into our voting booths. What actually happened is not tantamount to election meddling. And the thing about Elizabeth Warren is that she states that she wants to make sure that foreign interference into our election, quote, never, ever, ever happens again. However, I find it strange that if she's so concerned with foreign interference into our elections, she hasn't taken the time to denounce the fact that Saudi Arabia recently registered 120 new lobbyists since 2015, and since they upped their influence, Trump approved one of the largest weapons deals in American history. I haven't seen Elizabeth Warren denounce the $14.2 million that the United Arab Emirates spent to influence our government in 2013, or the millions of dollars that Morocco, Azerbaijan, or Israel spent and still continue to spend lobbying American politicians. I mean, where's the outrage? And if she's unequivocally against foreign interference in elections and democratic integrity, why hasn't she condemned President Obama's endorsement in the French election for Macron? And if you think that that example is unfair, then I've got another one for you. Bill Clinton literally tried to undermine a Russian election in 1996 to secure Boris Yeltsin's re-election. As Jacobin reports, the public record shows clear points of direct American coordination, collusion, and action in Yeltsin's favor. Meanwhile, the U.S. Senate intelligence report found that the Russian government developed a clear preference for President-elect Trump. Ooh, what a scandal! Russia apparently didn't get the memo that they're not allowed to express preferences. Only we are. If our leaders express that they want a certain election to go a certain way, there's no scandal there. But if someone dares to even hint that they might have a preference in our election, then that's just this huge scandal. It's a big deal. In fact, we're so touchy in America about election interference. If you just use Hillary Clinton's own words against her by releasing emails that she wrote, well, we're even willing to go so far as to argue that that's tantamount to election rigging. That, my friends, is what I like to call insanity. It's insanity. Releasing emails is not tantamount to election rigging, and we interfere with elections all the time. I mean, look at South America. I think they'd have something to say about election interference. But Elizabeth Warren is choosing to take the politically expedient route and attack Donald Trump on something that's easy. That the media wants them to talk about, because they can sensationalize that and make lots of money. Look at Rachel Maddow. I mean, her ratings are through the roof. So rather than focusing on the issues that impact our lives, Elizabeth Warren is choosing to be a coward yet again. So, to wrap this up, this interview was a disaster for Elizabeth Warren. You went on the Young Turks, which is the largest progressive news show, and you didn't expect that you would get pushback by espousing Democratic Party talking points that we all hate? I mean, it's just absurd to me. I was so disappointed in Elizabeth Warren. I mean, she went down a few points again in my mind, in spite of the fact that I'm trying to do everything I can to give her the benefit of the doubt, but she's making that so impossible. So Elizabeth Warren, if you really want to run for president in 2020 and get the support of progressives, then you've actually got to be progressive and stop being a coward.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.